Hello, I am here at Epcot for the world premiere of Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It's not here though. It's just a roller coaster, so I missed it. It's not playing. I don't know why I'm here. This isn't a movie. This isn't a movie theater. I was led to believe that it was here. It's just a roller coaster. It's a really good one though, so don't come here. It's not here. But eventually I did make it to a screening, and I'm also hooked on a feeling, and that feeling is emotional damage. I love Guardians of the Galaxy. In a time where Marvel had achieved the seemingly impossible with Avengers, changed the formula with Winter Soldier, a lot of people were a little bit thrown off that they were going to take a stab at the Guardians of the Galaxy, this ragtag group of heroes that not a lot of people really know about or don't know a lot about. But I was still excited. It looked like a really good time. But nothing could have prepared me for how good Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 ended up being. It's a movie that, despite having one of the worst villains in the entirety of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is still one of the best movies they've ever made. In fact, I would go further and say it's one of the best sci-fi movies ever made. Before you even take into account the sheer style, vibrancy, pizzazz, humor, character dynamics that perfectly play off one another, and the awesomest soundtrack that directly relates into the movie's characters and their development, then the amazing score and main theme itself, this movie is just fantastic. Because this isn't a movie about overcoming an enemy or standing up for the sake of good. This is a movie about finding family and overcoming trauma and personal pain, to trust yourself and the people around you, to connect. Yeah, sure, they grouped together to stop a great world-destroying threat, even though it probably is going to end up getting them killed, but that's not how it started. It started with money. Star-Lord wanted the orb for money. Gamora wanted the orb for money and to be free from Thanos. Rocket and Groot want Star-Lord to get the payout from the Ravagers for hunting him down because he took the orb. The thing that brings them together initially is sharing the payoff that Gamora can get from her buyer if they all work together to break out of the kiln. And what followed was art. This selfish group of douchebags somehow managed to set aside all their hang-ups to put it all on the line for the people around them, to, as Peter put it,
to give a shit.
Then we get to see it again with Volume 2, with Peter shutting down the legacy and this family, this father that he always wanted, because he's realized that he already has the family he always wanted.
You kill me, you'll be just like everybody else.
What's so wrong with that?
This is a group of people that, through all their faults, love each other, even when they fuck up, especially when they fuck up. And while Peter is largely the focal point of these movies, Rocket's always just right there, slightly to the side of him, dealing with his own nightmares and trauma.
I didn't ask to be torn apart and put back together over and over.
James Gunn's made it clear that he's the secret protagonist of these stories. His emotional journeys are just as profound as Peter's, which makes sense because James sees himself as Rocket. The end of Volume 2, that moment he realizes that all the Ravagers showed up for Yondu's funeral, that he'd be worthy of that love too, even if he stole the batteries.
He didn't chase him away.
No.
Even though he yelled at him, and he stole batteries he didn't need.
Well, of course not.
Ugh! These movies are driven on emotion and heart by how they make us feel. And it's why years later, when I've sat down to watch them again for the first time in a long while, I was still reduced to tears. Because it's all just so beautiful, and maybe I don't talk about it enough, but I will be won over with genuine emotion over anything, and these movies just have that genuine emotion by the tanker full. And we owe all of that to James Gunn, who incidentally made me a playlist one time. Hell yeah, he did. A man who's willing to let his characters feel so much and in such a way that we have no choice but to feel right along with them. And it's what the MCU feels completely void of now. These feelings just aren't there anymore, or they're fleeting, or they're banked on very unfortunate real-life tragedy. These movies have become more preoccupied with what's coming and what they can shove into a movie that seems cool than genuinely making something worth rooting for, rallying behind, and actually giving a shit about. For the first time, these movies feel like they exist purely to serve something that's years and years away instead of just focusing on the now. So going into Guardians 3, I was just really hoping that James Gunn would have the backing power to say, fuck no. And make a movie that honors the characters that he brought to screen, the characters he clearly cares so much about and dedicated to the reasons why we love and connect with them. And thankfully, I think he did with all the style I expected. So as we dive into the new movie, I'm just letting you know the next section has no spoilers. I will let you know when we're gonna get into the spoilers so you can leave if you haven't seen the movie yet. And you know what else has style? Today's sponsor, Displate. Displates are high quality, durable metal posters designed to satisfy your geeky pleasures. They have 1.4 million designs across numerous franchises from pop culture, entertainment, and gaming, so you're guaranteed to find the perfect thing for you or as a gift for a friend. They're printed with care on demand, so you never have to worry about a design not being in stock, but they still deliver fast right to your door. I fell in love with these anime-style Jurassic Park displays, and I can't wait to get the rest of the collection. Oh my god, it's so adorable. I love it. But you can build a collection out of anything you're passionate about, like Guardians of the Galaxy or other Marvel selections, Star Wars, Cyberpunk, Stranger Things, and even NASA. They're super easy to hang up with the provided sticker and magnet, come in a variety of sizes, and for every displate sold, they plant a tree where it's needed most. I put together a little collection of my favorite displates, so make sure to click the link in the description down below to check those out and get a discount while helping support this channel. Thanks again to Displate for sponsoring the video. So now let's dive right into the emotional gut punch. Now before getting into the basic plot, which is actually a little bit hard to get into without kind of spoilering things, this movie delivered for me. I experienced so many deep, genuine emotions, from fear to sadness to joy, acceptance, triumph, and beauty. I was a blubbering mess at times during this movie in the best way. It handles some things so well that I wish this was actually like a mini-series to flesh it all out and help with the pacing in some areas, but I also don't know if I could have emotionally handled that. I did end up watching this movie back to back in theaters, but there was a moment when I was watching it the first time through that I was like, shit, man, I don't know if I'm gonna make it to the next screening. Because even just while watching this movie without knowing any of the promotional material, if you manage to avoid everything, this movie will make you worry for these characters. Nothing feels safe, and it's in a rewarding way. So my ultimate takeaway is that I think that this is a beautiful wrap to a trilogy. I think because of the sheer amount of backstory we're getting in certain areas of this movie, it was a bit hard to know when and how to juggle some of it in, but I also believe it was all necessary. But I will say that despite some potential sequence of events issues, watching this twice back to back, there was only one moment where I was sitting there being like, okay, can't wait to get to this next part that's coming. I don't think it's anything I'd actually pull out of the movie because it does all tie into the resolution, but like maybe just rework them in some ways. And those are just minor nitpicks because so much of this movie just works. Like the antagonist, he is genuinely horrifying and hateful, and all the main events driving the mission work and make sense to me. I feel like this is the first time I've been genuinely afraid by a bad guy in a Marvel project in probably since Thanos. Like Gore was really cool. I love Namor, but this is like genuine fear and hatred for a character that doesn't have a thing that's all like, you know, they'd be pretty cool if it wasn't for this one genocidal tendency they have. A villain that's actually cruel and scary, not just one that we're told is scary. And we talked a bit about how most of these characters have experienced their own pain and traumas and personal issues, and how they ultimately came together to bandage each other up, choosing to come together in their flaws instead of in spite of them. So it makes sense to me that Guardians 3 becomes about how each of these characters begin to heal and grow individually with the support of that found family unit. Because bandages are great, they'll help you feel love, but it's not really addressing the underlying issue. As a reminder, with where we left off, we're picking up with them after a 5-year snap where only Rocket and Nebula survived. Then once the rest of them get unsnapped, Peter has to lose Gamora all over again when he realizes that this version is from the past and hasn't left Thanos yet, meaning that she has no idea who he is. And having to accept that his version is never coming back because she was sacrificed to attain the Soul Stone, and that can't be undone. And he can't really accept that. He is trying so hard to try to make her unlock these memories, but she's not that Gamora. Meaning that Nebula, who already has countless amounts of traumas as a result of Thanos, has to deal with losing the version of her sister that she'd finally connected with. And with the rest of them, Mantis may now finally be free of ego, but she's still spent her entire life a slave, not around anyone else. Drax still suffers the loss of his family every moment of his life. Rocket is always dealing with the pain and trauma of what he is and how it happened. And while Groot's generally just this happy, really compassionate guy, he does take on so much of the pain of the people around him. He wants so badly for the people around him to be okay. So we start this movie not with the schmarmy charm we may have anticipated following their brief feature in Thor 4, a terrible movie, but with the group once again just doing their best, and their best ain't great right now. Like, we got drunk Star-Lord and everything, and this movie is ready to deal with all that. Honestly, go back and watch the first two movies after watching this one, and there's so many little things you're gonna notice that I don't even have time to talk about them all. Now, as was made obvious from the promotional material, Guardians 3 was going to have a heavy focus on Rocket, and I love that. And I kinda hate that, but I love it, but I was dreading it because it had me on edge the entire movie. We learn all about his origin, which we knew was gonna be tragic, but my God, I was not prepared. I think they handled all that stuff exceptionally well, as much as it emotionally crushed me, and they also handle all the other characters well too. This isn't exclusively focusing on Rocket, it just does have a heavy focus on Rocket, but I swear everyone gets their moment in this movie. I think the action was great. There's this like little hallway corridor type scene that's just so fluid and beautiful and lets everyone show off their skills. I really loved it. It also includes a full F-bomb, which was just used artistically. I loved it, got great crowd reaction. As with all the Guardians movies, and maybe even more this time, it looks amazing. It really just proves that even if you're shooting everything against like a green or blue screen, it doesn't mean it has to look like ass. And that comes down to planning what's gonna work best. CG where it's needed, practical where you can, combine for the best results. And while it's not my favorite of the three, the Awesome Mix soundtrack is fantastic, and it was nice to have a couple tracks from like later generations. Ultimately, this is just the first Marvel movie in a long time that feels like it actually had stakes. These characters are being driven by loss and the fear of losing more. We care not only because we care about the characters, but because they care about each other. Pretty much anything that's been introduced across these movies is gonna get some kind of resolution and be addressed, and it still comes out as a cohesive film. As a warning, there are some pretty rough scenes involving animals, like nothing is graphic, but it's still extremely hard to watch even when the outcomes aren't bad. And I don't know if there's much else I can say that's spoiler free, because even the description of the movie is very vague, which I get, so I guess we are going to be going into some spoilers, so hop off now if you don't want any of those, because I just really want to gush about this movie. I'm not going to be going through it point by point. We're jumping in. So from the very start, this movie had me gripped with impending doom and fear. The cage filled with baby raccoons, the ominous hand reaching towards them as they cower in fear, the eyes of one little terrified creature that we know is going to be Rocket. My heart was broken immediately because I both knew that something horrible is coming, and I could just feel the emotion in these eyes, even though they're fake. Which then cuts to him listening to an acoustic version of Creep by Radiohead, lost in thoughts of what happened to him, how he feels broken, like something that doesn't belong. This deep sadness that clearly settles in him when there's nothing available to focus on. Because they might be putting up signs for the Guardians HQ, but the Guardians are in a bit of rough shape right now. Star-Lord's drunk. Still gutted about losing Gamora, having to be carried back to his room, and like that's how this movie starts. Before Rocket gets shit-rocked by Adam Warlock. At first I thought this was like leftover sentiment from when he stole the batteries in the second movie, but no, Rocket's creator is calling to collect on his investment. The High Evolutionary, a man determined to create a perfect society to push all living creatures into their perfect maximal versions, no matter the cost. Like Gamora said, there are corners of the universe that consider him God. And he's terrifying, hateful, genuinely sociopathic. When he delivers the line, "There is no God, that's why I stepped up." Damn! A man who's upset at the fact that Rocket has the intelligence to create and solve a problem even he couldn't, rather than seeing that as a success. Because he can't replicate it and he can't handle this being his perfect creation. So while the Guardians narrowly manage to fight off Adam, Rocket is severely injured. Which is when they find out he has a kill switch in his heart to prevent anybody from tampering with the proprietary technology. Meaning that if they do anything to heal him, he'll die, but if they don't heal him, he'll die. So the mission is to track down the files on Rocket's creation to find the passkey to override the kill switch, which will undoubtedly put them right in the High Evolutionary's path. But we start getting glimpses into Rocket's past through these like coma-like flashbacks throughout the movie. After brutal surgeries that Nebula says are even worse than what Thanos did to her, the first word out of Rocket's mouth was hurts. My fucking heart is shattered into a million pieces and I'll never be the same again. Thankfully, after all the cruelty, torture, and pain that he's endured, there's kindness waiting for him. The other animals from Batch 89, his friends, the people he picks his name with, because 89P13 doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. And they all think they're being prepped for the Evolutionary's new utopia, only to find that they're just the stepping stones to his perfect creations. So Rocket busts them out before they can be killed. A moment of triumph instantly taken away when the High shoots Lylla in the back. Yeah, that scene of them hugging in the trailers, immediately preceded by her death. I don't know why I hope they all got out and maybe got separated, or that they were just gonna still be locked up and we'd get to save them, but they all die, and it's the fucking worst. The cry that came out of Rocket is enough to make me start crying right now just talking about it. And just to have this monster start screaming right back at him as if he's like a child throwing a tantrum, it makes me feel things that I don't even know how to describe. The instant cut to Rocket just scratching the shit out of his face while Floor is just repeatedly begging him to stop so they can make a run for it. Rocket Teef's Floor Go Now being repeated over and over again was just honestly too much. Like, James, what the fuck? About to traumatize some children this weekend. So not only has Rocket been walking around with this pain of what he is and the trauma of what happened to him and his friends, but he blames himself for them dying. Their final moments were a horror, and he probably questions whether he deserves any love at all. Ah!
Everybody's got dead people. It's no excuse to get everybody else dead along the way.
And while that's happening, we just have Peter desperately giving him chest compressions as he flatlines, his scream mirroring the one Rocket had for Lylla, but he's refusing to give up. Honestly thought we were gonna lose Rocket here, really thought this was gonna have to be Peter learning to let go. Thankfully not the case. It becomes this beautiful moment where Rocket sees his lost friends, they're happy and experiencing their forever blue skies. And he asks if he can come because he's genuinely worried they blame him for what happened when they obviously don't. Keep it together! Keep it together! But it's not his time yet. Lylla says he still has a purpose. That no matter what he may have been created for, this is his story to make. It's been his story all along. And just like that, he's back and able to let go of so much of this guilt he's been plagued by his entire life. Man, I was hurting here. The tears were untethered. Then on the other end of this, Gamora gets to see this genuine side to Peter, the one that would do anything for his friends, the one that's never gonna give up on you even if he seems like a huge self-absorbed douchebag. Yeah, he might be a bit, but he'd still do anything for the people he loves. Because it's good to have friends!
It really is good to have friends.
It's just so beautiful. Now, building into these very emotional moments where they save Rocket, there was a lot of fun trying to break into the Orgo Corp, and at Orgo Corp, the open comms.
Well, what I'm trying to say is...
Peter, you know this is an open line, right?
What?
The stuff with Nathan Fillion and the worker he hates, Pete manipulating Ura, the dynamic between Drax and Manus, the bluntness of Gamora just shooting that chick in the leg, Adam incinerating the Ravager. But then there's some genuinely tense moments, like Drax getting shot twice. I really thought he was dying here. The emotion and tension is just really all nonstop with this. It's gonna make you laugh while putting you through the ringer, but this whole movie is just people putting themselves in dangerous situations to save their friends. Without any hesitation, even when they're pissed at each other, even when it's beyond stupid. Now this Gamora is back in the fold because they needed the Ravager's help to get into the Orgosphere to find Rocket's data file, and Gamora is now a Ravager. Yes, she found her new family with Peter's old new family. He's super not pleased about that. And for most of this movie, he's just telling her how she's supposed to be, how she would normally act, the things she would never do, the things she would absolutely do, which makes her point out the hard truth. What is so wrong with his life that he needs her to be something for him? Why can't she just be who she needs to be for herself? A lesson he does thankfully learn by the end of the movie. He appreciates her for who she actually is and lets go of the Gamora he loved. So now they can appreciate each other for who they actually are, but it is still so soul-crushing. Her leaving him off with the "I bet we had fun" waterworks all over again. Come on, guys. And by the end of the movie, this Gamora is more compassionate than where we left off with, but it's still not that Gamora. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We gotta build into the final showdown, and we are on Counter Earth, the utopia, the evolutionary made of the enhanced animal people. And while we do get some of the most fun moments of the movie here, like Kaiju Groot, where he just terrorizes the townspeople, Drax continuously being told not to lie on the couch, armbar motorcycle, the scene with the car door.
Push the button. It looks like you're pushing the keyhole. There's a button under the handle. Press that in.
Now what?
Open the door.
It's important for us to see that this supposed utopia has all the same issues that plague Earth. We have homelessness, we have drug dealers, we have violence, which is why the evolutionary actually just wants to destroy the whole planet and start again with these weird little human children things that survive on 30 calories a day. Oh good, he's upgraded to child slavery. I think the only distinct lag happens sometime around when Drax, Manus, and Nebula break into the ship to save Peter and Groot because they didn't realize they'd already jumped off. Absolutely love that you hear and see them whiz by though, just Groot pulling a Buzz Lightyear here to fall with style where we get to bash that asshole into the ground. And if you thought his death was a little harsh, remember how he treated Rocket and the other animals. Just because you're committing inhuman acts on them doesn't mean you also have to be cruel on top of it. But yeah, sometime around them being sent to the pit is when I felt like a little bit of a hiccup in the momentum. And it's not the moments where they're talking to the little kids, like that was great. This is a moment where Drax gets to show that he's not just a destroyer, the guy who laughs maniacally while breaking backs. He's caring and nurturing, and people are always discounting his actual abilities. And it's definitely not the moment that Nebula realizes they saved Rocket and cries, because that's another genuinely good and important moment of her showing genuine emotion. The relief she can feel now that she doesn't have this worst case scenario looming over her. And it's not the moment with the Abelisks where Mantis realizes that they're probably just afraid of them, showing the strength of her empathy. She gets to shine and stand up for herself a lot this movie, and it's really good. So there's not any specific thing that I'd pull out. It really is just like a pacing thing, because these are the best moments, the moments where these characters get to shine and come into themselves, acknowledge their flaws and work to overcome them, because they're so often at the forefront. There's a moment when Mantis points out that Drax is the only one of them that doesn't hate himself, and it hits Nebula, but it's true. And all this is building into a finale where once again they don't save their own asses or immediately try to hunt down the big bad. They go to save those kids that are locked up. They would have done it anyways, but finding out that the joob word they keep saying means friend.
It really is good to have friends.
Rocket's all in, and he's gonna do what he couldn't all those years ago. And this hallway scene is so damn good. It's just so fluid, constant, everyone gets the shine no matter where you look, something fun is happening, all to the Beastie Boys. It's just fantastic. This is the kind of stuff that makes action in movies worth watching. But then they had me terrified again. They all separate to do different things, and Rocket ends up alone, and as he's guiding the kids to the escape point, he notices a cage with little tiny baby raccoons. The realization that they're what he was and the trust that they're showing in him, the confirmation on the species card that he is in fact a raccoon, the way he starts to delicately scoop them all up before he realizes all the other animals, all sure to die as the ship explodes from the high evolutionary's crazed and obsessed actions. And even if it doesn't, the horrible stuff he might do to them, I lost it all over again. You can't do this to people, James. And of course, this is where the evolutionary pops in. Enraged that his most successful creation is this rodent he mutilated, this thing that won't listen to him, that has the audacity to try to live autonomously. But Rocket outsmarts the bitch again. And as beautiful as the rest of the team all filter in to help him, like he probably could have done it himself, but it's just such a nice thing to see. The only thing I don't agree with is letting him live. They've been running through henchmen for like an hour, and we're gonna draw the line at the literal genocidal god complex crazed geneticist. I assume he dies, but we don't see a body, so... Though we do get to see the damage that Rocket did to him. This mask's been covering a completely obliterated face and has a very exposed eye. It was pretty brutal. I'm surprised they showed that much. So as they're making the final jump over to nowhere, right as Cosmo starts losing connection between ships, Peter drops the damn Zune and goes to get it. And you think he's managed to finesse his way through this space gap, but then the debris starts to hit him and Groot's roots are freezing before they can reach him. And I genuinely thought we were watching Peter die in all his bloat-face misery. Which mostly left me wondering, like, what the hell happened to his helmet? Before Adam Warlock, man who's been popping up trying to kill them the entire movie, saves him while mirroring the creation of Adam painting on the nose but fun. All because Groot saved him off the ship because people deserve a second chance. Emotions and growth all the way down. So finally, into our conclusion, and it's not the typical, all right, off to save the galaxy vibes as usual. It's each of them realizing they need to figure out their shit. Pete's grandfather came up a couple times in the movie, how he never went back to find him once he would have been able to. He may have allowed himself to accept his mother's death all those years ago, but I don't think he was fully ready to face that part of his life. But now that he's learned to let go of the Gamora that he knew, it's time to confront the feelings that he's been running from since his mom died. He kind of had to learn the lesson the high evolutionary refused to. He said he was doing all this to create perfection for the greater good, but it's really just that he couldn't accept things the way they are. So this Gamora returns to the Ravagers, who love her because that's the family she chose. Mantis went from listening to Ego to listening to the Guardians, so she needs to go and figure out what she wants for herself. Nebula wants to provide these kids with the life, safety, and family she wishes she had growing up and wants Drax to help her because he's not a destroyer, he was meant to be a dad. So Rocket's a bit wrecked here. They go through all this, save him, he forgives himself for the past, gets another chance to do what he couldn't, and now he's gonna lose the Guardians? But no, it's his team to lead now, and he'll always have Groot, who for a minute you might think said something other other than I am Groot when he says, I love you guys. But that's not him saying new words, that's us finally understanding him like they do because we've spent so much time with him now too. And that's just a beautiful fucking touch. In the most meaningful gift, Star-Lord leaves Rocket the Zune that he's grown to love just as much because that's why he went back to save it. Man risked his own life not for his own reliance on music, but so his friend wouldn't have to be without it. Jesus Christ! I also love the callbacks with Drax dancing now because at the beginning he said that dancing is for idiots. And we get to see Pete reconnect with his grandfather and all the pictures of him and his mom on his wall that he was never forgotten. So much care put into these characters and letting them be who they need to be and not tools for the greater machine. But that's the movie. While I think some of it could have been tightened up, the emotional follow-through is just unmatched. I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. Hell, even Kraglin gets some emotional resolution when he's finally able to control Yondu's arrow. As for the post-credit scenes, I really like them. The first one is just the new Guardians group under Rocket with Groot, Kraglin, Phyla, who's one of the saved kids, Cosmo, Adam Warlock, and Blurp. Am I super interested in the movie with this particular lineup? Not yet. Am I happy for Rocket? Absolutely. But the way that original group came together is just unmatched. It's the compassion, empathy, spirit, scrappiness, imperfections, determination, hard-headedness, passion, and persistence that makes them so great. What makes them work so well together and what makes them worth rooting for. Now, the last end credit scene pissed some people off because of how basic it is, but I like that it had fuck all to do with anything else. It's just Pete eating cereal, talking to his grandfather about how lazy his 45-year-old stepson is. But there's a nice little nod to the holiday special because the newspaper headline is Alien Abduction, Kevin Bacon tells all. Just a nice little touch, you know, ending with the words the legendary Star-Lord will return. Because of course they're not done with these characters, and I'm mostly okay with that. Because this functions as a perfectly excellent goodbye for them if you want it to be. But this movie has more spirit, soul, and heart in its opening than most of the Marvel movies have been able to achieve in the entire runtime since Endgame. And that's why Marvel just really needs to spend more time thinking about the now and not the next. Though I will say the Marvels looks pretty fun. But that's pretty much gonna do it for the video. Let me know what you guys thought of the movie down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and thanks again to Display for sponsoring the video. Make sure to click the link in the description down below to get a discount. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later. So I'm here for the world premiere of Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I just got out, and I have to say, it's a bit short. A lot of standing, more standing than I expected. I guess that's what they say. You have to suffer for your art.